In this short video presentation, I'd like to talk about language and power. Language is a complex and dynamic system that changes with its use and is changed by its users. It's never neutral or unbiased. It's constantly shaped by those who have the resources and the influence to make their voices heard. Understanding the relationship between language and power and the various ways power is manifested in language is one of the opportunities that linguistics provides. Studying power in language is, or can be, aimed at making changes in the world. Mooney and Evans write, critical thinking about language can assist in resisting oppression, protecting the powerless, and building a good society. And this is a political choice. Not studying power in language, ignoring the ways that sexism, racism, and class have shaped the language we share is also a political choice. There's no neutrality here. Pretending to be neutral is ignoring the fact that power is already embedded in language. There are a number of ways that language relates to power. One is that certain varieties of language, usually those varieties used by the powerful, have come to be seen as legitimate. People who use those legitimate varieties are considered not only correct, but often assumed to be more intelligent, better educated, or just plain better. Languages change naturally over time, but sometimes that change is guided or shaped. Those who have the political power can establish mechanisms by which the language change favors them. Mooney and Evans give the rather ridiculous example of the president of Turkmenistan, who had the month of January named after him and the month of April named after his mother. He also had the word for bread changed to his mother's name. More everyday examples might be language planning to protect certain languages, to promote certain varieties, to eliminate sexist terms. All of these have to do with language and power. Censorship of various sorts is another connection between language and power. Censorship controls what people say through laws or social sanction. Laws against blasphemy are an example. In Granby, Quebec, a bylaw was recently passed to prevent people from insulting police officers. We also make judgments on what language is appropriate to use, not in terms of laws, but in everyday ways. For example, we may say that women talk more than men, and we might make that a criticism of women. Here we're not talking about the variety of language, but the way it is used by this group or that group. We're not talking about laws, just a social sanction. Finally, your language, the language you speak every day, has been shaped by power. The words you use and the expressions you know have already been influenced by the choices of those in power. We sometimes think of language as existing separate from its users and speak as if it were neutral and objective. Critical linguists, however, recognize that language is socially shared and produced. Language is socially shared and socially produced, and it's through this social distribution of language that power, dominance, and inequality are produced and reproduced. Language doesn't merely reflect the social sphere, it is social action. It participates in the social. And although language is socially produced, it's also mediated by individuals. And these individuals have the capacity to resist, challenge, or transform language. Finally, language is involved in shaping our identity and in constituting our subjectivity. The individual is not always fully cognizant of the social aspects of the language they're producing. In other words, you may be using language that is sexist, racist, or classist and not be aware of the way that sexism, classism, and racism have imprinted and left their mark on that language. Because of this, because language has power embedded within it, and because people using language or even studying language are not always aware of the places in which power has left its mark on language, It is the task of linguists to make themselves aware, to study power in language. It is one of the responsibilities in linguistics is to be aware of how power has shaped language and shaped linguistics as a result. Critical linguists are people who have made the decision to apply linguistics in such a way that challenges, undermines, or questions various forms of inequality. For example, it's important that we, as linguists, language teachers, or as students of language and linguistics, continue to question the ways in which those who speak a non-standard variety may be discriminated against, while those who speak a standard variety are privileged. And one way to do that is by asking who establishes the standards and who benefits from them. According to Mooney and Evans, the valuation of the standard language is not just held by a few people, but rather forms the basis of a widely held and powerful ideology. That is, insisting that the standard variety is better than others is a way of expressing, claiming, and maintaining power. Mooney and Evans continue and remind us marginalized groups may be denied access to power because of their language use. In terms of social class, there are degrees of marginalization. The lower on the social hierarchy a person is, the more marginalized in every respect they become. They point out elsewhere that the negative consequences for speakers of certain varieties could include educational discrimination, denial of employment, and even, in some cases, incarceration. This linguistic discrimination can serve as a more publicly acceptable mask for other forms of discrimination. People know that labeling someone as white trash is pejorative, but labeling their language in negative ways may be more acceptable. And this is true of all social identities. It applies in the realm of ethnicity, age, gender, and social class.